Thank you, Julie, for the nice introduction. Thank you very much. And hello to all the thrivers out there that have joined the summit. We'll be talking about transformative communication and how the NVC, nonviolent communication, can support mental clarity and relationship health. So, my name is Sophie Parianti, and I have been coaching and guiding individuals and couples for the last 25 years, mostly into understanding how to better communicate with each other and how to self regulate their emotions when in conversation and interaction with each other. So, having sitting down with so many couples and so many individuals in thousands of hours of coaching sessions, I'm very well aware of the ups and downs of relationship and conversations and how that can have a huge impact on the nervous system, especially when patterns are being repetitive over years and there is still no solution to how to self-regulate and understand what we can do in very difficult relationship or difficult conversations. So today I want to share a communication technique that is going to be literally life transforming for you. Um, don't underestimate the power of this methodology because I've experienced it personally. I've led so many of my clients through it, and it's been amazing. So, literally transform my life and transform the life of many, many people. So, let me start with a little story and how I discovered NVC. Um, NVC was not in my field of knowledge. 25 years ago I was I had done yoga, philosophy studies. I had done a lot of other methodology, but NVC had not entered my life until one day we had a very big argument, my husband and I, running our online media. We had a very big argument with our associate publisher, and it was somebody that we valued a lot, that we had a great relationship otherwise, but sometime from time to time we would go into those very complicated conversations that ended up not so well. So one day I'm really in the middle of that, and I remember that upstairs of our up our office there was a coach office that had nonviolent communication written on his door. And that one day I literally ran upstairs and knocked at his door and said, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what this NVC things is all about, but I am really needing help right now. It's getting pretty violent down there. So, he offered me to sit down, calm down, have a drink, and then he started talking to me. And what I discovered that day literally changed completely my life. Of course, my husband got also to understand that methodology because we decided to both get trained for over a year with this amazing man that gave me such a gift, which his name is Bill Sturley in Los Angeles. And we understood that there was another way of interacting with each other, another way to interact with our client, another way to interact with our family that would bring a lot of relief for us. So that was amazing. After those 15 minutes sitting down with him, we invited our associate publisher to sat with me and my husband. And again, within 10 minutes, a lot of our misunderstanding had disappeared. We felt very connected, very clear. And then we moved on to be much more equipped to have conversation with each other in a calm and respectful way. So that was a big deal. And so much that my husband and I spent the last 25 years integrating deeply this technique. We created, with everything that we've learned, also a much more complete way of introducing it to our client, which is called transformative communication. But today we'll give you a little bit of a sneak peek into the power of that. Let's go to the next slide. And if you see me looking side to side, sometime it's because I'm reading my notes that I've put in order to give you the best understanding for today's talk. So the nervous system and personal well-being is what we're going to talk about today a little bit, because This summit focuses on the nervous system, and I wanted to show you how important clear communication is to maintain a self-regulation of your emotions and your behavior. That is where the technique comes in. So, have you been into a similar situation? I'm sure you have, where your brain just is spinning and you could not find the right words when conversing with this person, being your child, being your husband, your partner, your family member, a client. That's what I call the system crash. That's when you're in the middle of a conversation and suddenly something is fuming inside. You're losing the capacity to stay calm, or you're becoming frozen, or you're losing words, or you're just running away. That's a system crash. That's when you're really, really needing to realign and use something that will help you refocus. So we have two primary modes of the nervous system. I'm sure you've gone over that with the other presenters, but just want to give you a little brush up. The nervous system has two primary modes: the fight or flight, or the rest and digest. In fight mode, we're ready to react, to defend, to run, which is really great if you're being chased by a lion, for example, and you're in the jungle. I mean, you better just defend yourself, react, and run right away. But if you're trying to resolve an argument over who left the dishes out, that sort of lion energy is not necessary. And we often go straight into this mode when we feel threatened, even in an everyday conversation. So, this is when NVC comes in and can be very helpful. NVC really helps us to shift from that fight flight mode to a state of calm clarity. I like to go that, like calm clarity, which is making it easier to communicate openly and authentically, which is always what we're trying to attain in a conversation. So before diving into the whole communication part, I want to zoom in a little bit. Like, think of it as, your body being your operating system. And when we're in a fight flight mode, it's like you're really, really on overload, and your operating system becomes unresponsive, worse, completely frozen. So think of it with the NVC methodology, which is like switching from Windows 95. For those of you that are still on PC, maybe you know what I'm talking about, to a really smooth Mac OS and user-friendly computers. So, that's where you need to put the focus when you're in a conversation, is like, how do I keep my body in a sort of smooth and relaxed mode so that I can act upon what is being told to me, or what is being shown to me, or what is being said to me, versus reacting in a way that is not very aligned. So I will now introduce you, because we have such a short time together, I wanted to get straight to the point and introduce you to the NVC basics, which are not difficult to understand because they go into 4 steps. They just go into 4 very simple steps, but 4 simple steps that are immediately going to help you change the way you speak and the way you interact in your conversations. So, what is exactly NVC? So, you understood NVC stands for non-violent communication. So, think of it as a language of the heart, like the language of a giraffe, because the giraffe is the animal that has the largest heart, right? So, this is a way of speaking that makes communication clear, authentic, and connected. It's like learning to speak French, but with less nasal sounds and more empathy. I hope I'm doing that, even though I'm French. So in NVC, we speak about the language of the heart versus the language of the head. The language of the head is what we call the language that we have identified with a jackal. Somebody that would be a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more intense. And the one of the giraffe is the one that is a lot more heartfelt, a lot more connected. And if you think of a giraffe, it has a very, very small head. So think of it as not being so much in your head when you speak, but being in your heart, What is it that you want to transmit to the person that you're talking to? NVC came from the American psychologist Marshall Rosenberg, who understood the limitations of the psychological context of conflict resolution and what worked and what did not. So he started to study what psychological interactions were providing in conversations, and he realized that there was a limitation because most of those conversations were located in the head, and there was the part of being just truly authentically feeling what is going on here for you first and foremost in the conversation, and also for the person that you're talking to. So if you look at the principles and the components of NVC, there are four of them, and it's a simple and immediate methodology to implement. It's not like a long process of learning it. It's quite quick, but it does take some time to integrate it because we have not been trained that way. Believe it or not, our entire society functions from a way different perspective of judgment and label and evaluation in conversation. So you're not really coming from a place of connecting with what is happening with you and the person. You're in a place of judging and labeling and evaluating what the person is saying. So here's the first step of the methodology, which is observation. So observation, it is what you see, what you hear, and what you're thinking without judging it, evaluating it, or labeling it. This is the part where you keep it neutral, like a sportscaster, right? You're just reporting. So if you look at this drawing that I prepared for you, it's observation versus judgment. In observation, you would observe by saying, you missed 3 meetings this week. This is an observation. There's no evaluation of it. This is just factually what happened. Now, if you look at judgment, you're the worst coworker ever, underlying because you've missed 3 meetings this week. You can see where you're attacking the person in their value and who they are, and you're making an evaluation of themselves and the work or the non-work that they've provided. So here you have a very visual way of looking observation versus judgment. Okay, it goes the same for labeling. If you're starting to call your child clumsy, that's a label. If you're calling them shy, that's a label. So judging, evaluating, and labeling being removed, you're being left with a very factual observation. And this is what we're after here in the first step of the technique is how can we observe life? How can we observe a conversation? How can we observe an action of somebody from a very factual perspective? Okay, that's the first step. The second step is the feeling, identifying the feeling that you're experiencing when you're faced with what somebody's saying or an action or an event. So the feeling is what you are experiencing emotionally. When you've identified that feeling, is you learning to express your feeling by being real, authentic, saying exactly what you're feeling. So you can see in this drawing that it would be, when you missed those meetings, I feel frustrated. And I want you to really adjust also the way you talk about the feelings, because feelings are one word. And often we will say, I feel that you don't care because you missed those 3 meetings, where a feeling is something that belongs to you. So you want to put the focus back on you, which is when you miss those meetings, I felt frustrated. So it's one word, which in a sense, if you were giving that big sentence versus one word, it would not be a feeling, it would be a judgment. I feel that you don't care because you didn't come to this meeting is a judgment, is an evaluation of your person. It's not a feeling. So notice the difference when you're talking about a feeling with one word, which is frustrated, versus a feeling expressed in using the you sentence with when you miss this you didn't care. Okay, so that is, saying it in that format really reinforces what you're experiencing and expressing your feeling. So think one word. When I talk about my feeling, one word. I'm really insisting on that because I've seen so many people trying to use the technique, but going back to the you way of speaking. Let's go to the next slide. And I want you to now understand that the next third step, when you've observed what happened, identify your feeling, then what you're going to seek for here is, what is it that I need underneath the feeling that I'm experiencing? So if we stay on track with this story, your coworker has missed 3 meetings, your feeling is frustration, but then what is it that you need underneath? And what you really need here is reliability. So what you would then express in your conversation is, when I observed that you missed 3 meetings this week, I felt frustrated because I needed reliability in our teamwork. So it's really about making the hidden needs become visible, so that the person that is in front of you is not just being judged or being pointed the finger out, but they're becoming aware of your feeling, the impact that them missing the 3 meetings had on you, and what is it that you truly needed authentically behind that, which was reliability. And notice how clear this communication is when you keep it about you versus the other person. So let's go to the step number 4, which I don't want you to focus too much on the request when you're learning these techniques, because it takes a little bit of while already to, remind yourself of those 3 steps, and you don't want to jump too quick into the request. But I wanted you to be aware of it. Making a clear request is really about, like, okay, so what do you need? What can be done or what can be said for you to alleviate that feeling, for you to get your needs met? So you want to think about what is a clear request that you can give. For example, here, the first request would not be, make sure that next time you're on time for those meetings or that you show up. The next week request would be more like, could we schedule a time to discuss this? Not a vague demand like just try harder next time, because that's very vague. It's not a real demand. It's not a real request. But maybe the first request you could have would be that, could we schedule a time to discuss this? So whatever is going on, um, in your conversation with that person, like, request something. Can we have a conversation about it? Can we maybe sit down for a moment? Or if not now, can we talk about it tomorrow? Make a request, whatever you need at that moment. Let's go to the next slide, which I wanted to compare what NVC is with making a bake, like baking a beautiful cake. In this image, you see that if we have the observation with no judgment, the feeling identified and expressed with one word, and then the needs expressed with one word as well, like, and then the request formulated simply, well, this is really, really the essential ingredients for a conscious conversation. If you're able to manage those steps, then you're really having a clear, calm, and connected conversation with the person that you're interacting with. On the opposite, you miss one ingredient and you start to react instead of acting, and then you're left with, what I call a flat, sad pancake of a conversation, because it really can go anywhere, between prison mode to, slamming the door and leaving, or screaming, and this is what you want to avoid in a conversation. If you have those 4 ingredients together, you will have a beautiful cake of a conversation. I want to focus now a little bit on how NVC brings mental clarity. You've understood already that separating what is happening in steps really calms the body down so that you can access your mind in a different way. When our communication is reactive, it creates a sort of mental smog. Thoughts get clouded, emotion escalates, and everything feels tangled, right? Now, let's talk about how NVC could really alleviate that. Um, I wanted to make a metaphor, which is like trying to watch Netflix with a slow Wi-Fi connection. Quite frustrating, right? I think we've all experienced this, and sometimes even giving up on even watching anything, especially if we live in a place where the Wi-Fi is not always running smoothly. So think of that. How can I get my Wi-Fi to be in a you know high speed so that I can clearly access the information? NVC will shift this by slowing down the process. It helps us identify the needs behind our words and our action. So you're kind of slowing down the process here. I always in coaching, when I'm sitting down with my clients, and especially have two people starting to get heated about the conversation, and about their issues in the relationship, I always tell them, like, slow down. Let's take a big breath. Let's have a clear, reflective thinking. Even relax a little bit into this conversation, take a pause and ground yourself, and then start to access the information from that perspective, right? Self regulated emotion, and then allowing you to access the information that you really want to transmit to this person. So suddenly you're not just reacting, but you're responding thoughtfully. This is what we're trying to attain here. Okay. So let's go to when that's not happening, and which is the opposite of NVC. So you can think, maybe, take a moment to think of a situation in which you felt angry recently, instead of lashing out, this sort of like, you always do this, or whatever you're screaming out when you think of that situation. um, this is what you could have said if you were trained in NVC. You could have said, when this happens, I feel upset because I need some predictability. That's an example of something that would have happened where, it was not planned, and you feel really upset because you are somebody that needs predictability. You like to know what is going to happen, and then you were taking a little bit off guard here, and that got you into upset. So can you see the difference? With one approach adds fuel to the fire, and where the other invites a pause, a moment of reflection. So if you were capable of saying, when this happens, I feel upset because I need some predictability, that would change the way the person in front of you would react, right? So can you just take a moment right now, just close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just feel that. Feel how that, if, you know, at times you're like bursting out things that you wish you had not said at time. I do that sometime with my child. I just say something because I'm a little bit upset, and then very quickly after, I just reconnect with my body, regulate, and then say that to him. I'll say it, when this happens, I really, lose my marbles, because that's, something that I've been repeating a lot. So instead of even saying that, you can go deeper, and by saying, when I see you do that, I start to feel this: frustrated, upset, annoyed, angry, because I have a need for this, whatever the need is: predictability, cooperation, understanding. So do you start to see how we put this together, where it's a very, very step by step way of understanding the situation and then expressing that to the person you're talking to? Um, okay, so think of NVC as a mental cleanse, a sort of reset button of your mind, right? And as your nervous system calms down, so does your ability to think clearly. This is the difference between, let's say, driving, in a foggy storm, or cruising in a clear, sunny day. Not the same experience, right? So if we are now applying the few things that I mentioned to you into our relationship health and NVC, we're starting to understand that if we can do that in conversation, we're going to be in a much better place. So, have you ever had an argument where you both just kept repeating the same points over and over, like louder and louder, like it was a sort of volume contest? I call this the broken record syndrome. NVC transformed that by creating a bridge of empathy. Okay. If you start to find yourself repeating things, and going louder and louder because you're not being heard, well, know that you're going into that broken record syndrome, right? And you want to move out of that very quickly. So here's the difference. Imagine somebody saying this to you, like, "You never make time for me." Instead of responding with a defensive, "Well, I'm busy," you could say, "I hear you feel neglected," correct? Suddenly the other person feels heard and the tension melts because you're now putting the attention really on how they're feeling instead of defending yourself. And that is what we call empathic listening. So when you're starting to use the technique to enter a sort of empathy toward the person, that makes a big difference. This is, like maybe the difference between a tug of war sort of interaction and moving that into a sort of collaborative game of Lego building, right? So Lego building together, one by one, you say one thing, I say one thing, you say one thing, but then we wait for each other, we listen to each other, we hear each other, so that we can stay in a place of empathy. So NVC is not about getting your way, it's about finding a way forward together. And that's very important to remind yourself, because it's not about being right or being wrong, it's about staying connected. So, by focusing on shared needs and empathic listening, relationships shift from adversarial to connected. This is what I call mutual understandings, right? Because you're having an experience, but the person you're talking to is also having an experience. And you start to experience the magic of mutual understanding, not just saying words, but just genuinely hearing and being heard, which makes a big difference. So, shall we put this into a little practice? Because, by experience, you really understand a lot better and integrate a lot better. I want you to think of a recent conflict at home, work, or even a spat with a friend that you had. Got it? Okay, just think of something like, really, oh, it didn't go well on this conversation. Okay? But so hold on to that thought, like think about it. Who is that you recently had a little bit, even if it's somebody at a supermarket or somebody that took your parking spot, anything simple. It doesn't have to be a drastic things with a very intense relationship right now, but think of it as something that I wasn't the best of myself, or it didn't feel so good. First, let's go through those components again, just a little revision here, where you can start to my screen is not moving. Let me see what's happening here. Okay, I'm going to try to go back to the other slide, and coming back. Okay, now it's coming. Okay, so here are the 4 steps altogether. Number 1 is observation. So think of that altercation that I just mentioned. You got it? You've got the moment. Can you put yourself back in that moment where you were talking with that person? Ask yourself this. What exactly happened there? There's no judgment here, just facts. What happened there? Okay, you got it? Formulate that. It's like, when I think of this moment, this is what happened. That person said that, or that person did this. Now, connect with the feeling that you had when this person said or did that. The feeling is, how did it make you feel when you received that information or that word, or you observed something that was happening. Like, how did that make you feel? One word, remember? Be specific. Use one word like sad, disconnected, annoyed, frustrated, angry. Anything that comes up for you that represents that sort of emotion you felt at that moment. Okay? You got it? Okay. Now, what was your need in that situation? Think about it for a minute. Be specific again. Use one word. What did I really need here that I got upset or frustrated or sad? Maybe I needed support. Maybe I needed trust. Maybe I needed cooperation. Maybe I needed empathy in that moment. So try to identify that need. And the next step would be the request. But because you're not in that situation right now, it would be, not necessary to express that request. But what you could do right now is you would ask yourself, what is it that I would have requested then if I was more aware in that moment of what I needed? What would you ask to address that need in that moment if you were aware of it? That's what I want you to identify. So I really encourage you to um, take a moment to write down all of that. Here is my observation. Here is my feeling. Here is my need. And here is the request that I would have had. And you would be surprised that in many, many occasions, the same feeling and the same needs are showing up. Not always, because there will be situations that are different, that will activate different feelings and different needs within yourself. But you will be noticing that after a while, doing this over and over, there was very, very recurrent needs and feelings that are showing up repeatedly. We are going to be to the next slide, which is coming up now. Okay, so 1 second, I'm going back to the other side. So, now I want you to, take a moment after you've written down to tell your story. Like, try to tell your story to yourself. So, when you tell the story to yourself, it's like, what exactly happened here? Tell factually what happened. When I saw that happen, and you describe what happened factually, I felt, how did it make you feel? So I felt, and you state one word. What was your need in that situation? I felt one word because I felt one word because my need for wasn't met. What is that need for you that wasn't met? So you can see the process where you're stating the observation, you're identifying the needs, you're identifying the feeling, sorry, you're expressing the feeling, and then you're identifying the needs and you're expressing the feeling, the need. Oops, I'm mixing all of them, but you got it, right? And then the request again, say out loud what you would have requested, and you will see how that feels to be able to say it out loud. Okay. So take a minute to reflect on this. How did it feel to do this process? Feels a bit different, right? Like, this process turns reaction into response and stress into clarity. So reaction into response versus stress into clarity. Got that? And remember that NVC is a practice, not a magic wand. Through it sometimes feels like it for me because my husband and I, having practiced this for over 25 years now, let's say we have 30-second arguments and we spend maybe 2 hours talking about it in a very positive, constructive way, identifying all the feelings and the needs that showed up. But this is a fun conversation because first, we're both coaches and we love this work, but also because we don't spend time in the reactive mode. We spend time in the constructive mode, talking about what was that? Why did we react it so strongly? What was felt when we observed that? So this is what I want you to retain, is that what's really, really important here is for you to think of your operating system, how I can get myself into a state of calmness, how this process can turn reaction into response and stress into clarity. Let's go to the next slide to sum it all up for you. We have a short time here, so I can't give you all the extent of what nonviolent communication can be, but this is a very, very good way for you to understand that NVC clears mental fog and creates deeper connection. It's a simple yet profound tool that can transform how we engage with others and with ourselves. Because first and foremost, what I want you to understand is that NVC is a way of regulating your own self emotions. Whether calming a storming argument or finding clarity in chaotic situation, think of NVC as your trusty umbrella in a rainstorm of emotion. I love this drawing for you, which is really thinking of like no matter what's going on, being at work, being with your kids, being at a Christmas dinner. I always hear from my clients that the holidays are the worst time for them to be managing their emotions because they're going to be with their family, and that's where they get very, very triggered. So now you have NVC to move on to the holiday seasons and remember to practice, ooh, what did my parents say right now? What did my siblings say? I didn't like that. Observation. How did I feel? What was the need that was not met here when I heard that? And then respond in a way that is very NVC, which would sound like, hey, when you say that, it didn't feel good for me. I felt very hurt. And my need for emotional safety is not really met here. That would be a very smooth way of interacting in that sort of situation. Um, okay, let's recap a little bit that in moments of conflict, it's really natural to focus on getting our point across, right? Defending ourselves or ensuring that our partner gets it. But I really, really encourage you that, you know, yet when both partners in a conversation shift from defending their stance to actively trying to understand the other person, conflicts transform battles into real bridges, right? Where you can really walk toward each other. And this doesn't mean that you agree with them or you let go of your own perspective here. It just means that you're creating space for empathy. The word that I really, really use in my coaching is always empathy. Practice empathy because you're having an experience, you're going through something, but so is the person in front of you. So is the person having, even if they're screaming at you, that means they're having an experience. Something is going on for them. Okay, so that's something to really keep in mind. You're going through something, they're going through something as well. So, my invitation to you is don't wait for a crisis to learn and integrate the NVC methodology. Please, please, please try applying it in your next conversation and see what happens. You can use it actually as soon as the end of this Zoom call, as soon as you're, coming out of here. Think clearly. Step one, what am I observing? Step two, what am I feeling? Step three, what do I need? Quite simple, right? Quite simple to retain, but you really got to practice, 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 because we haven't been trained that way. We've been trained the opposite. So even though, there's some magic in NVC, I mean, the magic is simple. It's a simple communication technique applicable immediately. You still need to practice a lot in order to integrate it. Just remember this: thriving in life is not about never having conflicts, but navigating them with grace, empathy, and clarity. And all the other presenters have given you also some other tools to integrate for you to navigate your life with grace. But empathy and clarity is really what NVC will bring you. And that's exactly what the technique helps us do. I am so ready to hear your questions. I love sharing more knowledge on it. So I'm here to answer any of your questions. So please, 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 please fire them away to me. Here is my email, sophie@sophieparienti.com. I'm more than happy to respond as much as I can. I get quite a bit of requests for question as well. So please be patient with my response. I also have a Facebook group that you will be given to join, where you're my guest to come in that private Facebook group where you can also ask question, and the community is there and we're answering your question. And I have a question for you. Are you ready to go from painful conflicts to deep connection? Because this is what my offer is. You can really, really alleviate the pain of conflicts if you're going through a lot of them, or even a few of them. We don't need them. We need connected relationship. So let's go deeper together with NVC. Please, please get your freebie with the links that you will be receiving in your emails, and contact me. I'd love to hear from you, and know that this little talk had an impact in your life. That would make my day. Thank you so much, and I will hear from you. Bye bye to everyone.